As a seasoned tax leader, you have to make decisions every day on how to evolve your tax function. So what do the latest results from KPMG's ongoing Global Tax Function Benchmarking Survey tell us about how easy, or indeed how hard, it is for the tax function to deliver on its priorities today? To discuss this, I'm delighted to be joined by Amar Thakrar and Joanne Rishworth from KPMG's Global Compliance and Transformation Practice. So starting with you, Amar, what has emerged as the priorities for tax leaders today versus tomorrow?
So survey respondents were absolutely clear that the number one priority is value creation through business partnering, and that makes absolute sense. I think what was really interesting in the survey is that closely behind value creation and business partnering was risk reduction. And I think the priority for tomorrow will be about how you preserve the value in the organisation as there's less and less opportunity to drive value. Practically, what that means is organisations are really going to look at reducing risk in ways such as looking at processes, thinking about do they have the right controls in place, are they efficient?
And Joanne?
Yeah, so I think we also saw in the survey that around 84% of respondents were planning to improve or to automate processes, and 73% looking to provide opportunities to further develop the skills of their teams. And I think these things together show that tax leaders are really focused on managing the day-to-day, the routine compliance processes, so that they can free up the capacity of their teams to focus on the value add and the more strategic priorities that are coming through from the new requirements.
The survey identifies a number of disruptors for the tax function: BEPS, finance and technology changes within the organisation, wider commercial changes. How do you recommend that tax leaders respond to that? Joanne, coming to you first.
Yeah, I think we also saw in the survey that around 60% of tax functions are looking to increase their home tax resource or the size of their tax functions, and 40% looking to increase the number of resources or the size of their functions offshore. And so a real drive to increase resource, and very few looking to reduce the overall size of their tax functions over the next 5 years. And certainly things like finance and IT transformation that we see a lot at the moment can be seen as a disruptor, but the most successful tax leaders are using that as an opportunity to drive positive change.
Thank you. The three key areas that survey respondents cited as the major disruptors were tax reform, M&A, and finance transformation. And I think a lot of organisations do get really worn down in responding to these one by one. What some tax functions are starting to do is step back and realise this is just going to continue, and now is the moment for change. So they are thinking about how they transformatively look at the disruptors and where they want to get to in the future. So if you think about something new that's come about, like Pillar 2, I think 12 months ago organisations were saying, I'm quite interested in how I retrofit my processes and systems to really deliver this. Now organisations are saying, how do I think about this in a different way? How do I change where accountability lies, what systems I use, where data come from, and what the sign-off processes are?
So when it comes to tax transformation, how far do you need to go versus how far should you want to go?
Well, there's no one-size-fits-all answer for the tax function. Tax transformation isn't just one thing. You've got to look at tax transformation through different lenses, such as people and processes, systems and technology, process controls, just to name a few. So you've got to look at your key disruptors, everything you need to do to mitigate those, and that will start to form the base of your plan and your ambition. So in today's environment, that means tax functions do have a lot of transformation to undertake. In fact, 59% of organisations said they'll have to access advisor capability to drive real transformational change, and 84% of respondents said they're looking to automate processes just to retain talent alone. So transformation is going to be quite significant for most organisations.
Yeah, I think we also saw in the survey that 54% of respondents have ranked strategic thinking as their number one skill set required in the tax function of the future, which is more than double those that said tax technical capability was the number one skill set, which is interesting because you would think tax technical capability would be very important in tax function, and it is. And it was also more than 10 times the number of respondents that said tax technology was the number one skill set, which again is interesting as we see the shift towards tax digital requirements in the future. And what this tells us is the ability to analyse situations, to understand the long-term impact of that and to make decisions is really critical. But what we often see is that companies are faced with a challenge and we jump into solution mode and we implement a solution that achieves the here and now without really thinking about how that impacts the long term. So defining a vision for your tax function ensures that as you start to make decisions about your people, your process, your technology, your tax risk, that those decisions are helping you move closer towards your vision rather than away from.
And if we think about the fact that different organisations are at different stages on their transformation journey, for tax leaders that are at the start of that, what's other peers doing and what's happening more broadly in the market that they can learn from?
Yes, so I think that where I see it being successful, tax transformation successful projects, is where firstly, really understanding the challenges and I mean what are the cause of those challenges, and therefore making sure that the solutions or the changes that you implement are addressing the cause of those challenges. I think secondly, it's about resourcing, so making sure you've got the right amount and the right skill set in the resources that will be supporting your transformation. And thirdly, change management. So if you can bring your stakeholders along on the journey with you, you're much more likely to achieve the desired outcomes and to make those changes stick.
I think that's right, and I think what I see is peers are really embracing the moment for change and saying now is the time for transformation. I think secondly, organisations are championing the value case behind tax transformation. And in our survey, respondents cited three main benefits. The first is improved cycle times in tax, the second is improved analytics, and lastly, reduced cost. My third aspect that I see in the market would be organisations not just planning for 1 or 2 years away, but really being ambitious around how they want to address the next 5 years, because I think we all know there's only more disruption to come.
Okay, well, with that, thank you, Joanne, thank you, Amar. It's really been a fascinating discussion. The benchmarking survey results really do give a global snapshot of just how complex an environment today's tax function is having to navigate and the choices that need to be made. If you would like further information on the survey or anything that we've discussed today, you can find this on KPMG's Future of Tax webpage.